Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'll call our December the 4th Nash County Commissioners meeting to order. It's customary for us to begin our meeting with a prayer. We welcome you to stand and join us if you like. You can use this time to have your own prayer or a moment of silence, whichever you choose to do. And I'll call on Ms. Wells at this time for the invocation, and then Mr. Outlaw for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Wells?
Let us pray. Our Father, this is the day that you have made, the day you have given us, Lord, to come together to make decisions that affect Nash County and, God, sometimes affect other counties. But, God, we just ask you as we go through this meeting that we'll all remember that we all have different ideas, but at the end we come together. Just be with us, Lord, and keep us close to you. Bless each family that's represented. And be with us, Lord, as we go through this meeting. And all these things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Would you join me in the pledge? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to ask the board if they would have any objection to me adding one item, which would be item 12A to the agenda. That item would be concerning our public hearing that we had last month, and it would be an order granting the conditional use permit 17084 and modify the findings of fact based on testimony from the public hearing. Is there any objection to me adding that to the item, to the items, and put it in as item 12A from the board?
No.
Okay, if not, we stand to modify the agenda to add item 12A. At this time, we will approve our minutes. We have 5 sets of minutes. Janice, you've been real busy, looks like. We have October the 2nd, which I think I would ask for us to approve separately from the other 4 items, which is October the 10th, October the 16th, November the 6th, and November the 20th. But at this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the October 2nd meeting, which included the lengthy public hearing on the solar farm, and I'd entertain a motion for approval from anyone that read those minutes word for word, and probably took you just a few minutes to do that.
So moved, Mr.
Motion we
Chairman.
approve.
Okay, I got a motion by Ms. Wells, a second by Mr. Outlaw. Is there any questions on that motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Those minutes stand approved. Then we would take the other 4, which I just listed the dates of, and I'd entertain a motion for approval or any corrections of those minutes.
I'll make a motion we approve all those 4.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Combs, second by Commissioner Belfield. Any questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, each December we elect new officers or new chairman and vice chairman for our board. And at this time, I will appoint our attorney, Mr. Vince Durham, as temporary chairman to facilitate the election of the new chairman for the 2018 year. Mr. Durham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Board. As you know, state law requires that the commissioners elect a new chairman and vice chairman every December. Therefore, I will entertain any nominations for chairman of the Nash County Board of Commissioners.
I nominate Commissioner Robert Davis to be our chairman for 2018.
Okay,
Second that motion.
I have a motion and a second to elect Robbie B. Davis as chairman of the Nash County Board of Commissioners. Is there any further nominations or any discussion? Seeing none, I will entertain a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise? Congratulations, it's unanimous.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
And I certainly want to thank the board for seeing fit to allow me to serve chairman for another year. I hope it's been a reasonable chairmanship for me. I did attempt to include every board member on every decision that we made, and we'll continue to do that. Please stay in touch with me. You see anything that the chairman does that doesn't suit you, I've got 3 phone numbers. You call me, or you come to see me, or tell me to come see you, and we'd certainly discuss it and work through it, but I appreciate that. At this time, I would open the floor for nominations for a vice chairman.
I nominate Commissioner Outlaw for vice chairman.
And I second.
All right, I have a nomination by Ms. Barnes to continue utilizing Commissioner Outlaw for vice chairman, and a second by Ms. Wells. Is there any further nominations at this time? If not, entertain a motion to approve that nomination of Mr. Outlaw.
So moved.
Maybe I didn't do that quite right. I already got the motion.
Call for a vote.
We got him nervous.
Thank you, Mr. Bellfield. At this time, all in favor of keeping Mr. Outlaw as the vice chairman, say aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? That's not a good start. We'll try to get better. Next item on the agenda is the public comment section, item number 8. And ladies and gentlemen, what this is for is to allow comments from any citizen that wishes to speak to the board on any item that's not otherwise covered on the agenda. If you're on the agenda as a public hearing or any other item that's on the agenda, we would ask that you wait till that time. But seeing none rise, what we've got is 4 people that signed up. We do ask for you to sign up out front prior to the meeting, and I will take those in order of the sign up. And when we get through, if you happen to miss the part that you should sign up prior to the meeting, we'd certainly allow you to speak at that point in time. The first speaker we have is April Baker. And if you would come forward, April, and state your name and address. And it is concerning a touch of the Father's Love Food Pantry. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I am April Baker. I live in Watson Seed Farm Road, Whitakers. The food pantry is in Brattleboro, and we are a 501c nonprofit food pantry. We're called A Touch of the Father's Love, and we reach Nash County as our primary, but we also affect people in Edgecombe and Wilson County, especially the veterans in Wilson County. We have a pet food pantry. We serve veterans, senior citizens, and families that are in need of food. So far this year, we have fed 23,269 households with food, which totals to 69,475 people. We partner with the Central and Eastern North Carolina Food Bank in Raleigh. We do receive USDA and TFAP commodities. The stores that we get food from are Sam's, Walmart. We have 2 Food Lions, and Target. Our recipients, when they come through, they receive a big box of food weighing about 75 to 80 pounds. This food is meats, cans, dairy, breads, and produce. They also go outside and they shop in the marketplace and they pick out their own produce and breads. We're excited to be here. We've been here since 2012 in Brattleboro. We are actually in serious need of a new building. The building that we're in right now is in Brattleboro. It's owned by a businessman. We've been there 6 years, but he needs it back by the end of this year. So we have 4 weeks left, or we will be homeless. We have reached out to Governor Cooper, and Miss Betty Jo has been also working with us, which is Senator Burr's representative. So we came here just to let you know what we're about and what our need is, to see if you may have some ideas that you can help us with. The building that we've been in for 6 years has been a tax write-off for the owner, because we don't have the finances as a nonprofit to rent anything as well. So, and the food bank in Raleigh lets us know that we are the biggest food pantry in Nash County, which allows us to really help so many people and so many elderly people and veterans. It's really on our heart. So thank you for listening to us today and letting us be here. Appreciate it.
April, thank you for being here. we'll sure see if we can't help you find that location. And I would tell you, Ms. Shepherd has certainly worked hard for you. She has made many phone calls I'm aware of. The next speaker is Jane Finch. Ms. Finch, good morning.
I'm back again, Jane Flowers Finch from Raleigh, native of Bailey, about the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. I keep coming back, I'm going to keep coming back, and I'm going to keep begging all of you to take a hard look and to take a position against the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Inaction is action. Your failure to act is an endorsement of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. This pipeline is a fraud on you. It's a fraud on all of us. I am a trial lawyer for 39 years. I've tried a lot of cases, and it was my job, and I took seriously the job of getting correct verdicts in cases, and the word verdict means to find the truth, and we've got to find the truth here. You are being taken advantage of, and you're endorsing the pipeline. Well, technically, the law says, well, I don't have any power in it. It does. It does make a difference because all those people from the Atlantic Coast Pipeline came down here in 2013 and 14 and 15, courting y'all and every county commissioner in every county along the Atlantic Coast Pipeline to get their endorsement. And they did that because it's something that FERC looks at. And if you come out against the pipeline, it's still something that FERC will look at. And it's why they're still courting you. I know they're still seeing people, and they're going to see people in government agencies, and our citizens don't know and understand and can't compete against this multi-billion-dollar company. It's not one, but four of them. Four of them. There's a pipeline that's going to come through this county. And this is a picture of a pipeline, and there's something you should note about this pipeline. There's no spigot. There's no spigot in Northampton County. There is no spigot in Halifax County. There is no spigot in Nash County. There is no spigot in Wilson County. There is no spigot in Johnston County. There is no spigot in Sampson County. There is no spigot in Cumberland County. There is a spigot in Robeson County. That is the only spigot. And if those people from Duke Energy and Dominion are up here telling you that there is a tap here, we need to look hard. You need to get on your computers. You need to sign in at FERC, and you need to see what they filed at FERC. You need to see what they filed at FERC. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline, Dominion, and Duke have filed thousands of papers at FERC. And I have tried to look at every single one of them, but I haven't found a single one that's going to put a tap in any of these counties. I have consulted with FERC lawyers in D.C., and they tell me it is highly unlikely that if it ain't there now, it's not going to be there. And if you're being told by Norris Tolson or the manager of City of Rocky Mountain or any of those people they're going to get a tap, they are getting bulled. And I'll tell you a little bit of engineering that I've learned. There's a compressor station in Northampton County. That's the last compressor station before it gets to Prospect, North Carolina, where it ends. They got to have enough pressure to get that gas from Northampton County to Prospect. And every time they put a tap, they have to reduce the pressure. Now, they have an M&R point in Johnston County and an M&R point in Cumberland County, but it doesn't say tap. That is a place they could put a tap, but it's going to be solely for Piedmont Gas and Duke Energy. The preceded agreements, which we're not privy to, that are private at FERC, this is a private company getting to take property by eminent domain. There's not going to be, it's very unlikely that you're ever going to see a tap here, ever. And if you think about it, it had to be filed with FERC, and they haven't done it. And they have filed. Dominion has filed over 100 times since they filed their initial plans, and every time they do those changes, they haven't added one. They're not. So I beg you, plead with you to take a long, hard look. At the very least, I asked Mr. Davis if we could have a time on the agenda so I wouldn't have to be crammed into 5 minutes. I plead with you to have a hearing, have a public hearing. Let's get sworn testimony. Let's bring these landowners here and let you tell the stories of they've been bullied and lied to give up their land. They have to give up their land because if for every land the owner that settled, it helped Atlantic Coast Pipeline get the right of eminent domain. The lawyer who's filed the constitutional challenge to this in D.C., Carolyn Elephant, I have her summary that was filed with FERC, and she explains how
The constitutional challenge is that they are allowed to go in there and tell landowners they might get eminent domain. They collect up a lot of landowners and say, look, 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 we've got 50% of the landowners settled here, so we should get eminent domain. But they didn't have it. But they used the pretense of getting it in order to get those landowners to settle. And there's something else that's known on me. We have not gotten answers from them about liability. And y'all should be really concerned about these indemnity agreements filed in Nash County. I have filed a massive complaint with the North Carolina Board of Land Surveyors and Engineers because the surveyors and engineers are not licensed in North Carolina. The one who's filed your zoning things here is not licensed in North Carolina. And I know I've used up my time. I would love to have more, and I have a lot more to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Finch.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Steve Valentine, who also wishes to speak on the ACP. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning,
You
folks.
State your name and address. Pleased to have you this morning.
You want me to say, put it on the record?
Yes, sir.
My address is 2568 Lennoxville Road in Beaufort, North Carolina.
Okay.
Chairman Davis, members of the commission, I appreciate the opportunity to stand up here and talk to you all today. What we're doing now is really the essence of democracy, which is where citizens have a right to come and petition the governing bodies for the redress of their grievances, and I'm here to do that. Give you just a little bit of background. I'm from Nashville originally. I was born and raised here. My stepmother still lives over on 4th Street. We lived right across the corner from Frederick Cooper. I used to play in his yard when I was a kid, and it's very gratifying for me to come back here and see Mr. Cooper's name on this building and this very impressive facility that you all have an opportunity to work out of. My grandparents lived here. Their house is still on Body Street. They were still working on getting cleaned out, even though my grandmother's been gone since 1997. My father, Tim Valentine, practiced law here and served this district in various elective capacities for 40 or 50 years. I practiced law here for a couple of years after I got out of law school. I knew Mr. Durham before I joined the JAG Corps in the United States Air Force many years ago. And it's good to see some familiar faces. Vince, it's good to see you again. Listen, I'm here to talk to you about the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. I'm not as passionate about it yet as Ms. Finch because I don't know as much about it as she does. But I'm learning, and the more I learn, the more concerned I am about it. I'm generally familiar with some of the things that she spoke with you all about. And given time, I'm going to get myself educated to where I can come back here and speak in more detail to you, perhaps at a public hearing down the road. Right now, I have 5 minutes to speak to you. I would echo the comments that Ms. Finch made, but I would add these additional things. My dad died 2 years ago. One of the assets of his estate is a farm located off of 581 between Spring Hope and Bailey. The Tar River flows right past there. My sons, his grandsons, spend a lot of time up there enjoying that place. It's quiet, it's wooded, the river's there, and it's a beautiful part of the world. Nash County is a beautiful part of the world, and I've lived all over in my time in the Air Force, which gives me a greater appreciation for the community that you all have here, the county that we have here. This pipeline, I don't know how many times it's going to cross the Tar River, but it'll cross the Tar River numerous times. Anybody that looks at a map, the Tar River doesn't run straight to the coast. It meanders and twists and turns. I understand this pipeline, if it's built, is going to go under the Tar River, which I think is horrendous, because if something goes wrong, you can't just go under there and turn a couple of bolts and tighten it up and fix it. The environment here is a legacy that we can all leave to our children and grandchildren. And I think that pipeline has the potential to damage that environment in a way that will last long beyond the time maybe some of us are on the earth. So I would ask you to think long and hard before, and to take a stance, as Ms. Finch said. And as I said, she's more passionate about it than I am, but I don't know as much as she does. But I would ask you all to take a stand. Eminent domain is a difficult concept, but most of us understand that sometimes governmental entities have to come in and do things for the public good, like building schools or building reservoirs or building highways. That's not what's going on here. Duke Energy is a private company. Duke Energy claims and subject to this constitutional challenge. Duke Energy, a private company, claims to have the power to come in and take people's property away from them. Take people's property away from them. Now, if the highway department does that, people kind of go, okay, we need highways for the public good. But the highway department doesn't make 14% on the construction of a highway, for pity's sakes. I understand that the people that invest in this pipeline are guaranteed a 14% rate of return. So you've got a private company that's going to take people's property and make a profit off of it, which I think turns the concept of eminent domain on its ear. And I think the environmental implications are enormous. I think the evidence as it's developed will show you all that the pipeline is unnecessary. And I would ask for all these reasons that you all take a stance against it. It's going to come right through this county, and you all are the governing board for this county. And I would ask you to think long and hard about the implications of putting something like that in this county that's going to be here 100 years from now, and to take a stand against it. And I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to be back in Nash County. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Glad to have you back in Nash County.
All right. Thanks.
Next speaker is Marvin Winstead Jr., who also will speak on the ACP. Good morning, Mr. Winston. You would restate your address for the record.
Marvin Winstead Jr., 540 Sandy Cross Road, Nashville, NC. I would like to echo what both Ms. Finch and Mr. Valentine have said this morning. Every morning I get up and watch WRL TV, and I'm assaulted with commercials sponsored by, they say, Energy Sure, which is a front for Dominion Resources out of Virginia. This is one of our local papers, half-page ads. There's a lot of misinformation in this. In fact, to me, there's no more truth in advertising anymore. It's just almost everything you read here, they're entitled to their opinion, but it is misinformation trying to fool the public, as has been pointed out by the previous two speakers. And I have sent around for each of you a copy of some information that I want to bring forward. This was provided by Sustainable Sandhills, which is a group in Cumberland County. 10 myths that almost everyone believes about the proposed Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Myth number 1, it exists. Myth number 2, nothing can stop it. Myth number 3, it's the best or only option for our growing energy needs. Myth 4, the main purpose is to deliver energy to customers along the route. I think Ms. Finch covered that very well a while ago. Myth number 5, it will create jobs. Myth 6, it will lower your energy cost. Myth number 7, it won't damage the environment. Myth 8, it's safe. Myth 9, gas is green. Myth 10, it's no big deal. Going back to what Ms. Finch said about FERC, a lot of things they don't tell people. I've got a neighbor that has 1/100 of an acre that they want an easement on. That neighbor got tired of all the calls and visits and caved in and gave them an easement. But when they tell FERC, we got this landowner to give us an easement, they don't acknowledge that it's only 1/100 of an acre. There's quite a bit of difference in an easement on 1/100 of an acre and 50 acres or 100 acres or 400 acres. They get the same points with FERC, whether it's 1/100 of an acre or several acres or hundreds of acres. And there's a big difference when it comes to the environmental concerns there. Myth 1, it exists. There is no Atlantic Coast Pipeline. So far, the ACP is just an idea. It's a proposal by Duke Energy, Dominion, Southern Company, and Piedmont, which is now owned by Duke, to transport fracked natural gas from West Virginia to Pembroke, North Carolina, more specifically or accurately, Prospect, North Carolina. When Duke talks about the pipeline, they use the word is a whole lot. This is a grammatical trick designed to fool you into thinking that the ACP is a thing that exists and not just a proposal. Even pipeline opponents fall into this trap when they say things like, ACP is bad for business. Make no mistake, the ACP would be bad for business, but not unless we let them build it. Nothing can stop it. The second most powerful weapon in Duke and Dominion's public relations arsenal is the perception that their plans are inevitable. This is understandable since North Carolina regulates electricity and natural gas, which means that people don't have a choice of who provides service. But they are still owned by outside investors. These companies may be chosen by local governments, that the only provider of electrical service, but they still are owned by outside investors. And investor-owned utilities' primary purpose is to make money for themselves, not to serve the public good. There are absolutely ways that the public can stop pipeline projects and hold corporations accountable for better energy policy. Myth number 3, it's the best or only option for our growing energy needs. This myth is a twofer. Demand for energy in North Carolina is projected to remain flat through 2050, and natural gas is not the best option to supply the energy need. Even though our state is growing, we are getting better at using energy efficiently. It is entirely possible, using existing technology, to meet all of our energy needs with local power. Solar, wind, hydroelectric, and biofuel. This has the added benefit of keeping all money for energy generation and infrastructure maintenance in our state instead of sending it to other states where frack gas is produced. Relying on multiple smaller electrical producers instead of one huge pipeline also makes North Carolina's power grid more resilient to natural disasters. And speaking of natural disasters, we've had 2 1,000-year floods within the last 16 years. Myth number 4, the main purpose is to deliver energy to customers along the route. As Ms. Finch said, there's not going to be the taps. Right here in this chamber, Michael Thompson stood before you a few years in August of 2014 and said there could be as many as 13 taps from the Virginia line to the termination point in Robeson County. And as she's pointed out, they have not materialized. In order to begin construction on the pipeline, ACP LLC needs to obtain numerous federal and state permits. Every single one of these permits, thank you.
You can finish up, Marvin, if you're pretty close to the end.
I will read the conclusion here. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline is a bad idea for North Carolina. It's a poor solution to a problem that doesn't even exist. Natural gas is fracked out of state and piped into North Carolina. We only send our energy dollars and control for the energy elsewhere. And as the members of this board and stewards of Nash County, Mr. Valentine mentioned the 14% rate of return. That means that Nash County's utility bill, if this pipeline were built, would go up 14%. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That concludes the signees prior to the meeting. Was it anyone else that missed that requirement? Seeing none, we'll move on through our agenda. Prior to starting on the next item on the agenda, I just want to make a few comments about the board policy on public comment. As you know, it is our procedure that we normally do not comment the day of public comments on a matter, simply to allow us to have our staff to look at the matter, give us all the facts about a given matter, and to just be sure we don't speak too quickly and not know everything about a given subject. Normally, we will get back with the individuals on a case-by-case basis and let them kind of answer the question that they may have brought to this board. And it's sometimes something that we can do about the items brought to us, sometimes it's not. But I do think this board has a requirement to respond to every public commenter that comes before this board. In the case of the last 3 months, we've had numerous speakers on the pipeline come to us, and we really haven't responded to you, and I'm going to attempt to do that this morning after speaking to each one of our board members and seeing how the board still feels about the pipeline. And I'll be pretty brief about that. 3 months ago when you came, we had one individual speaker that asked us at that point in time to either do one of two things: to pass a resolution against the pipeline in Nash County or to remain neutral. At that time, the board didn't feel like we really needed to respond because, as everyone probably is aware, this board has remained neutral on this item from the very beginning. It now seems to have evolved into the last couple of months where we are specifically being asked to take a position against the pipeline. And therefore, that brings a question where I feel this board needs to respond to. And that's why I took, as chair, seriously on my job to speak to each board member about this and see what our position was today. And quite frankly, today our position of the board of Nash County Commissioners is to remain neutral on this item. We choose to do that for a number of reasons, and I would just go over just a few of them. But In the beginning, this board attended many meetings that were held about the pipeline, because we, like everyone else, didn't know anything about it, and we did listen. We had many meetings throughout the communities that each or some of the commissioners attended, different ones. I myself attended them in 4 different counties in the beginning, just to learn as much as we could about that. The reason that we have taken the position of not taking a position on this, passing a resolution either for or against it, are really about 4 main reasons. The first one is the county does not really have any permits that we would issue of any significance in regard to this pipeline construction. If we did, we probably would have to take a position. There are 3 minor permits that we will be issuing, as I understand it, and I may not quite have that right, but I've done a little research on that with our planning department and pretty much understood it anyway. First permit is a flood permit, and we do have 4 areas in the county where it goes through a flood-prone area. And in approving that permit, which we have not done yet, but we seek advice from the state of North Carolina, which we have done, and we have received that advice back, and there were no issues with the permit that was submitted, and we would be more than likely issuing that permit fairly soon. The next permit, also minor in nature, is a stormwater permit for those driveways that are needed throughout the county to get to access for the pipeline. In some cases, the pipeline will be located on a parcel of land considerable distance off in the road, and it will require an easement to get to it just to maintain it. And in doing that, we would be creating more impervious area in the county. Therefore, it is a need to have a stormwater permit for those driveways, and any area in Nash County that creates a half acre or more of impervious area does require that stormwater permit. So that would be a permit that we would be issuing, even though it's pretty small in nature, because, as you know, the drives or the paths will not create any significant increase in the impervious area. The last permit would be simply an overall zoning permit for the county. Anytime you have a construction or a utility going in the county, we would issue a zoning permit. As we know, a utility is allowed in all of our zones in the county. Therefore, it's a pretty simple matter, since it's approved everywhere by our ordinance as we currently operate on, that permit would be issued. We have a very significant mixed feeling from our citizens about whether we should pass a resolution for the pipeline or whether we should not. This board would always take into consideration all citizens in Nash County when we make a determination of any kind. And in this case, we have a lot of passion on both sides of this issue. We certainly understand the group that is here today and what their issues are. But in listening to our citizens, each commissioner also is very aware that some of the people have, as you know, settled with the pipeline. It has been a source of revenue for farmers that had a significant distance across their farm, and some of them are pleased it came, some of them are not pleased it came. But in the end, it would be very difficult for us to make a decision anyway, knowing that we had a very mixed view throughout our citizens and landowners in Nash County. It would be putting us as a Nash County board, which is an item that each member of this board is very concerned and passionate about, that we would be making a decision for property owners of what they could be doing with their own land. Occasionally, we may have to do that in a zoning matter. We don't particularly like doing that, and generally, we do our best not to get involved in a decision that a landowner should be making about their property. They generally, I don't think there's anyone in the audience that would seek the government get involved in you doing something with a piece of property that you own. Therefore, we think the decision is best made by each individual landowner. Excuse me just 1 minute. The last thing that we realized very early, and that we also put a lot of our reasoning behind not making a decision or taking a stance on it, is that this board feels that regardless of any stance that we would take, that it really wouldn't affect the outcome of whether this gas line gets built or not. These are decisions that are made mostly at the federal level, some more significant state permits, but as I indicated, the little bit of county permitting that is required is very minimal in nature. Therefore, we just do not want to take a position on something that we understand that regardless of where we are, it's not going to make any difference in end results. And for that reason, this morning, the Nash County Board of Commissioners still choose to keep a neutral stance on this matter, and if that changes or board members come to myself as chairman in the future and wish to change that or revisit it, we would certainly do it at that time. And I appreciate you being here this morning. Jane, I see your hand up, but this was just a response to the public comment area, and I really don't want to get back into a discussion about it at this point in time. You're welcome to come back at the next meeting.
I have a procedural question that I will take at this point.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. At this point, we would move to item number 9 on the agenda, and welcome back Mr. Danny Tyson for senior Tar Heel legislation and guest that he has with him. Good morning, Mr. Tyson.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. Lamb, Mr. Durham, Ms. Evans.
Morning.
Good to be with y'all again. I'm here to say thank you for my appointment to the North Carolina Tar Heel Legislature as your delegate. Thank you, Ms. Jackson. She taught me into this.
She can convince you people pretty easily.
Yeah, she seems to be able to do that sometimes. I guess you could say I'm sort of here to tell you a little bit about what went on. This legislative little body is sort of made up just like your legislature in Raleigh. It has 100 delegates. We meet in Chapel Hill 3 times a year. Our agenda is mainly to advocate for senior citizens of not only Nash County, but North Carolina. Keep me straight, Stacy. And I hope that you got a copy of some of the legislative things that was presented. Of course, like I say, I will either choose or they will put me on a committee. I think there's 4 or 5 committees they have, and I'll be put on, and what we'll do is look at legislation that affects senior citizens across North Carolina and things that we could do to make those areas better for us. So I also put in your package a thing that's got 211 on it. And this right here, I guess, sort of like social services, does a lot of things for people who are in need and have lack of funds or things. 211 is sort of through the United Way, and it lists on there things like food, housing, utility assistance, health and services, mental health, all grades of things that they're able to help do in a time of need when people either are short of money or need help or need advice. These things can be done through calling the 211 or nc211.org. So these are things that can help our citizens when all their other ways of looking for help has run out. This is another way that they can ask for help. So I'm not going to take up a whole lot of your time, but I am honored to tell you that Ms. Winston here works for Nash County over in the Senior Center, wears many, many hats, I do find. I can't keep up with all she does because she does so much, and I know she has a busy schedule, and I'm going to let her come up and speak to you just a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here to talk a little about a project that I've been working on in Nash County. It actually stems from a statewide project that's going on. It's called Dementia Capable North Carolina. So it's a statewide strategic plan for addressing Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. The North Carolina Institute of Medicine Task Force developed the plan to address 16 specific topics as they are related to Alzheimer's and related dementias. The plan follows the guiding principles of Dementia Friendly America, which was released in 2015 at the White House Conference on Aging. Currently, Minnesota was the first state to spearhead the movement, and 28 states have joined the forces. 14 of those states have active programs statewide and are part of the Dementia Friends License Program. North Carolina is one of those states. Generally speaking, many people often use the words dementia and Alzheimer's interchangeably. However, dementia is not a specific disease. It is a general term often referred to as an umbrella term to describe a group of symptoms that affect memory and social abilities that interfere with your daily living. There are several types of dementias, but the most prevalent is Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is the 6th leading cause of death in North Carolina and the 5th leading cause in Nash County. Currently, North Carolina has 160,000 older adults living with Alzheimer's or related dementia. By 2030, that number is expected to be over 300,000. It can't be prevented, cured, or slowed. There are 2 major forms: early onset, which is typically before the age of 65, and normal onset at the age of 65. Early onset has been noted to start as early as age 29, but the average age of onset is 75. The goal of Dementia Capable is to improve statewide awareness and education, support for people with dementia and families, improve and enhance services, reach underserved populations, and improve data and research. Dementia Capable Nash County has partnered with Spring Arbor, Red Oak Methodist, the Pilot Club, Nash County EMS, Boyce Willis Care Coordinators, Nash Community College, and our Area Agency on Aging to focus on the recommendations and bring awareness to our communities. Nash County has 2 great resources in Project Lifesaver and the Family Caregiver Program, which allows us to reach caregivers and people living with the diagnosis. Nash County has identified 5 of those recommendations as related to first responders, law enforcement, and health professions. So these are recommendations that are already ongoing within Nash County. Recommendation 3.1, increase awareness and promote education through health promotion and education programs. Recommendation 4.9, expand the dementia-friendly hospital initiative. The Outer Banks Hospital was the first dementia-friendly hospital in the state. A curriculum was developed to educate all hospital staff to improve care and associated risk for people with dementia and cognitive disorders. It was something that was asked for us to provide in Nash County during an EMS training that we had, that if we could offer this to our staffs of our ED and hospital. Recommendation 4.10, promote Alzheimer's and related dementia-specific trainings for health professions and community workforce. Recommendation 6.5, improve home safety resources and workforce capacity. And recommendation 6.6, enhance public safety and law enforcement outreach. Trainings have recently taken place with the Nash County EMS Con Ed classes with 115 participants. Melanie Bunn, a nurse and dementia training specialist with Alzheimer's of North Carolina, provided these trainings at Nash Community College. Ongoing trainings have been going on with Rocky Mount Police Department, provided by myself, and so far 122 members from patrol, dispatch, investigators, sergeants, and captains have attended. The trainings are providing information on Project Lifesaver and responding to calls of wandering. The goal is to expand on these trainings with the help of Mark Hensley. He is our Dementia Services Coordinator with the Division of Aging and Adult Services with the state of North Carolina. As Danny Tyson spoke about NC 211, recommendation 5.3 is continued No Wrong Door initiative and collaboration with NC 211. We are focused on expanding and letting the community know how to call the call service and navigate the website. Long-term goals for dementia-capable Nash County focus on supporting caregivers and families touched by the disease and promoting meaningful participation in community life. Throughout North Carolina, we are seeing an impact on the movement. Orange County has OC Cares. They have a 3-year initiative in place funded by the U.S. Administration for Community Living to support caregivers and their loved ones. They are expanding on respite programs, building memory cafes, providing more in-home care trainings and support groups, as well as a dementia business initiative. In Nash County, we plan to expand on senior-friendly businesses, a movement that Stacy Schatzer spearheaded. It will tie the community in, and as the Recreation and Senior Services Department, it is our goal on making our communities and parks age-friendly and dementia-friendly. The idea is to integrate an age-friendly community and dementia-friendly community together so all older adults with dementia can stay active and independent as long as possible. Thank you.
Board members, we really transitioned from 9 straight into 10 on your agenda item, so at this time I'd ask if you had any comments or questions from either the presenter on item 9 or item 10.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Belfield.
In reading the report last night, I was reading it, it seemed to be basically what you're looking at is what you can do and help those who already have dementia and Alzheimer's.
Right.
You're not looking at promoting how you can stem the tide of Alzheimer's.
That ties in with the North Carolina Institute of Medicine and their recommendations. They are looking at funding more research at the state level and tying it in that way. So at the local levels, we're trying to help caregivers and families that are recently diagnosed with it or that have been diagnosed with it for several years, helping find them local resources. So at some point, we would like to tie it in with the state.
I've read some recommendations, suggestions rather, coming from National Alzheimer's Association, which they talk about is 60 and above. You need to stay active. You need to do a lot of reading and keep the brain, I'm using the term stimulated.
That's right.
And all these things need to be passed on to our citizens, especially those 60 and above. And I was just wondering if.
Well, that's
if you're
where the
okay.
Senior Center
I
turns into a
understand
great
where your
resource.
where your concentration is, but I was just wondering if you could add that on to it.
It is part of our goals. We, right now, have been focused on the law enforcement aspect and health professions because that was an easy tie-in with Project Lifesaver. But the other recommendations that involve community involvement, we are working on a Nash County aging plan, and we actually have a livable and community survey that we're getting out into the community to find the needs. So hopefully we'll find some new ways.
But I applaud what you're doing, coordinating with the different agencies in there, nursing homes or rest homes, home care, and giving them, providing training for those, which is important. But I just see a twofold thing here also, because it may spread you out, but that's probably where you can form more coalitions to promote things that you can do, maybe to prevent it, and if not prevent it, at least you can slow it down.
Mr. Dyson, did you have a response?
Well, I was going to say, hopefully with Ms. Winston, that I can do something as far as taking it as a senior delegate back to our delegation, because we do walk the halls over there in Raleigh to hopefully advocate for on the behalf of Alzheimer's. So I'm hoping that I can get that on the agenda so we can go push that a little bit over in Raleigh.
Good. Other comments from board members or questions of the presenters?
One quick thing, I did want to say thank you for what you're doing on behalf of Billy Morgan while I'm here. I think you're doing a good thing. I think it's the right thing. And I like the comment about Billy's face being put on the first one. If you could push that a little bit, I would appreciate that too. So, so on behalf of myself, I would like to say thank you for what you're doing for Billy. I appreciate it very much.
Well, as you know, Ms. Dyson, this started from a public comment in public comment session, and we do respond back to each comment. Sometimes we move a little bit slow, but
it's just appreciated.
Yeah, we are real close, I think, to bringing this to its completion, and thank you for bringing the idea to the board.
Okay.
And thank both of y'all for being here this morning on a very, very important subject. I heard you say many times in your presentation, 60 and over, and I looked down this board right here and the staff, and there's not but a couple of us that are not already there, so thank you for what you're doing.
Okay,
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item number 11, which is a conditional use permit extension request, and I'll call on Ms. Nixon to present that.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Pull a little stuff, a few things out. This morning, we have a request for a 6-month extension of a conditional use permit that was previously issued for a solar facility on Fraser Road. The request is by Cypress Creek Renewables, which is the developer of the project. You remember that this is the site, you may remember, this is Worth Road, 64 is here, and the original request covered both sides of Fraser Road. Since the original request was approved, there have been extensions, I believe 2 extensions already issued for this permit. The developers do intend to complete it. You may remember that there's been for the last many months, maybe a year or more, that there's been some delays in getting permits moved forward based on some activities that are required by Duke Energy as the energy provider, and that we don't know exactly where those are standing, but those have prevented a number of our solar projects from going forward based on studies and actions that need to be taken by Duke, and therefore they're outside of the ability of the applicants to move projects forward. Just to remind you about this particular one, it was originally approved for solar facilities on both sides. In one of the previous extensions, the properties that are on the south side of Fraser Road have been eliminated, and so currently, the current request would be to extend the permits that would allow development in these areas up here on this side. The current permit and this is known as Spring Hope Solar 2 and Spring Hope Solar 3 on this side. The current permit for those projects, which involve approximately 98 acres of lease area, will expire on January the 5th. Approval of this request would extend that permit through July of 2018. And the project developer is Cypress Creek Renewables. In your packet, you'll find 2 statements of support, or which details what kind of work the developer has done and some of the constraints on moving forward with this particular project. And if you wanted to see the site plan about how those are laid out, I also have a copy of that if you would like to be reminded. The Cypress Creek Renewables representative cites the construction delays as being related to circumstances beyond their control, as I previously mentioned, through actions of Duke Energy. And other than that, I would mention that immediately following the original conditional use permit authorization, the subject property was transferred to Dogwood Creek Land Holdings, and that's the current property owner. And as the property owner, that group would be responsible for deconstruction at the end of the life of the solar facility. And so the requested action is to approve the 6-month permit extension through July 5th of 2018. And Steve Evans is here this morning representing Cypress Creek Renewables if the board has any questions for the applicant.
All right, any questions from Ms. Nixon or the applicant from board members at this time? If not, I'd entertain a motion for approval of the request to extend it for 6 months.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Barnes.
Second.
Second by Ms. Wells. Any questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Nixon. While you're up there, we'll move right into item number 12, which is a waiver of the UDO subdivision standard.
Okay. This is a request for a waiver of the UDO subdivision standards, and we see this every once in a while. It is the provision that requires lots on roads with capacity deficiencies to have additional road frontage or additional acreage in order to subdivide new lots. South Old Carriage, I guess I'll go back to the beginning. This is a request to create a lot, or with a minor subdivision, to create a new lot, and it involves properties located at 3679, 3695, and 3713 South Old Carriage Road. The property owner, the property owner is Bruce Baker and Patrice Baker, and also Dustin Bruce Baker and Haven Elizabeth Baker. The situation, South Old Carriage Road is one of the roads in Nash County that has more than 1,000 vehicles a day, and it qualifies under that higher capacity road definition in the ordinance, and so those additional criteria apply when you're trying to subdivide a lot on one of those roads. Currently, there are 2 lots here. This area, it has this is lot number 2. It has a sort of a skinny stretch down here from the majority of the lot, and then what we call a foot down here on Old Carriage Road. That lot is consistent with the regulations, and it already exists. And the request here is to create lot 3. You can see this home here. There you go. You can see this home here, and they would like this. A lot would be created that would allow that home to be on its own lot. You can see this driveway that exists and goes back between these homes and goes back to access the home on lot 2. And what this request would do would be, let me get up close. Here we go. Too many maps in my pack. This has a lot more lines in it, so if it's easier to look at the photo, just let me know. What this does is it creates, this is that home that home in the area that we just saw, and what it does is it creates this lot as a separate lot from the remainder of lot 1, and it also creates a shared access easement along that shared driveway, which is currently in existence and currently being used by the homes on what would be lot 3 and lot 2. Okay, the last thing that the request would do would be to create a non-access easement across the frontage on lot 2, and that the reason behind that is because that sort of forces the use of that shared access easement and prevents additional driveway cuts along that frontage. Okay. So just to kind of recap, lot 2 is existing. The request creates lot 3 out of lot 1. It also creates the access easement along the existing shared driveway, and it creates that non-access easement across the front. And the purpose of the UDO regulations along these high-traffic roads, of course, is intended to limit the proliferation of driveways and vehicle access points along those roads in the hopes of decreasing point of conflict accidents. So this subdivision waiver is requested in accordance with the UDO Article 10, Section 8, about waivers in order to allow the subdivision of the lot, and the rationale for that is what we typically use with shared driveways, which is the equal or better performance. And basically in this case, what that means is that the occupants of these homes currently use that shared driveway, and this kind of formalizes that and enables us to create that extra lot, that third lot. The TRC reviewed this request on November 2nd, unanimously recommended approval based on the determination that it does result in equal or better performance, and it's subject to a notation of that waiver approval on the plat itself. The Planning Board also reviewed this request at their November 20th meeting and unanimously recommended approval as well, subject to the same notation. And Mr. Baker is here in the audience this morning if you have any questions from the applicant about the request.
Any questions from board members on this item at this time of Ms. Nixon, or we'll have Mr. Baker to speak on it if we need to? Seeing none, I'd sure like to find a reason why we couldn't approve this, just because of Mr. Baker, but, look like we're in mighty good shape, and, it's also a county employee that, is an owner in here too, so I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble with Mr. Baker, and all of us gonna get in a lot of trouble with a county employee, so I'd entertain a motion at this
Let
time.
me bail you out right now, but I move for, that we approve the requested waiver.
Thank you, sir. Moved by Mr. Outlaw, second by Ms. Richardson. Any questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. The motion carries unanimously. Got what you need, Mr. Baker. I know it takes a little while for us to get things done, but glad to do it for you this morning.
I appreciate y'all's time.
Yes, sir. Nancy, while you're there, we added item 12A to the agenda, the order granting the CU modification of the findings, and if you want to move right into that and explain to the board a little bit different procedure than what we've had before, but if you'll let us know what's going on, appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'll rely on Mr. Durham to supplement, or if I start going in the wrong direction, to correct me. But this is an item to grant an order to approve an order granting the conditional use permit, CU 170804. This is the permit that was the subject of the very long public hearing that we had in October. And basically, this is a little bit different because what we're requesting is that the board look at this order and adopt it with the expanded findings of fact that we have from that hearing. What happens is at the October 2nd meeting, the board did conduct a lengthy public hearing related to that request for the Sabatis Solar Farm down at Winters Road and Mount Pleasant Road. And at that hearing, witnesses and citizens and attorneys provided testimony. And at the close of the hearing, the board adopted findings, concluded that the request met the requirements for issuing the conditional use permit, and then approved the issuance of the permit. And in preparation for that meeting, part of the staff report was to include some suggested findings. It was noted in the staff report, I think at the time, to remind the board that the planning board had not heard all that testimony because we had that 30-day delay between the planning board and the board's hearing to allow the opponents time, as they had requested, as their attorneys had requested and the applicants had agreed, in order to try to get their testimony, their professional testimony together. So the information that was heard at the commissioners' meeting was not necessarily what was heard at the planning board. It was more expanded. And so when we adopted findings at that meeting, the suggested findings that were in the prepared report, they did not include the information that was first heard at the hearing. So what we're requesting here is that those findings that were adopted at the end of that meeting in October be expanded to include testimony that was made at the hearing. Mr. Durham, does that pretty much sum it up?
I think you find this, obviously this order is prepared in anticipation of possible litigation. But the truth is, this order reflects what happened at that hearing that day in more detail, because she couldn't prepare an order that showed what was going to happen because we didn't know who was going to be presented in evidence that day. So this needs to be adopted, and truthfully, in the future, when we have contested hearings, we need to sort of do the same procedure. And hopefully we'll be able to use this template in future occasions, because we can't guess what the testimony is going to be, nor can we guess what this board's action is going to be.
Would that require another public
It does not. No, it just means that we will take a little bit longer to approve the findings of fact in the order. It might take a month, as it is as here. And Nancy and I delved through those long minutes that Janice prepared, and it was
Thank you, Janice.
it was the job.
Any other questions from Ms. Nixon or Mr. Durham on this item? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve, exactly how do I need to say this, sir?
Approve this order granting the conditional use.
All right, entertain a motion granting this order, for the conditional use. Moved by Ms. Richardson, is there a second?
Second.
second by Mr. Barnes. Any questions on this motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Nixon.
Thank you.
Mr. Durham.
Thank you.
All right. Recognize Mr. Lamb at this time.
Yeah, Ms. Nixon, you made reference to extensions necessary because of negotiations with Duke Energy. Does that deal with the cost of what they would pay these people?
I'm not sure the nature of it. It's some sort of review. I believe it's a review about the connections and the process. I don't think it's a financial negotiation piece.
Okay.
I don't know that for sure.
Is that
I think
recurring?
Mr. Evans left,
Is
but-
that not just this solar farm, but other solar farms as well?
In the past, what we've heard, and I got this information from Chris Sandifer, who's a member of our planning board and deals a lot with solar farms and testimony related to those. And he said last year and earlier this spring that there was sort of a log jam or sort of a backup while the energy company made some studies and made some determinations internally to them related to their processes and their grid information, I guess, their technical capabilities, and that until those studies or whatever were completed, that a lot of solar farm applications throughout the state were going to be held up, and then they would start to trickle out after that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is item number 13, a single-family rehabilitation program loan to be presented by Patsy McGee. Good morning.
Good morning. After we submitted the required documentation to close out this project, the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency subsequently sent us a letter that is in your packet notifying us that we've met all requirements to close the project. Nash County worked with the Wooten Company to use $722,538 to rehabilitate 14 single-family homes, and of the 14, 7 were occupied by very low-income residents and 7 by low-income residents. And of the 14 homes, 100% included elderly residents and 9 included disabled residents. We worked with 4 contractors who completed the housing improvements within budget and using no Nash County funds. The initial set-aside of $170,000 allowed for rehabilitation of 3 homes, but pool funds, which are funds that other local governments didn't use, so they went back into a pool that we could apply for, later allowed for the rehabilitation of 11 more homes. So in your packet are photos of the 14 assisted homes, and we recommend that the board authorize closing of this program, including the approval of the grant closeout ordinance prepared by the Finance Department and in your packet.
All right, any questions of Ms. McGee on this item? Closeout item? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to authorize closing of the single-family rehabilitation grant.
I offer motion to authorize the closeout of the project.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Bellfield, a second by Ms. Wells. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? That motion carries. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis,
Yes, ma'am.
may we take a break, short break?
Well, we can indeed call for about a 8.5-minute break at this time. Call our meeting back to order. We are now on item number 14, funding for Nash Community College Mobile Unit. I call on Stacy to present that to the board.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Nash Community College is requesting funding for the purchase of a mobile unit to house trade-type community service and drama classes. The space provided by the unit is needed for class relocation from the lower level of Building D that will be renovated for the veterinary technology, the Vet Tech program, beginning in the fall of 2018. The cost of the purchase of the unit is $11,147 plus tax. The request is for $10,000, with the college picking up the remainder of the cost.
All right, any questions from the board on this item in the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to make a comment that the community college will be embarking on a capital campaign in order to raise funds to have, I believe, an extension to the Science and Technology building for Vet Tech. Down the road, it'll be several years before they can raise all that money. This mobile unit will allow the community college to, in the fall of 2018, to go ahead and start this Vet Tech program. And I believe this would be the only Vet Tech program east of Sanford, North Carolina. And with that said, I would move for approval of the request.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Chair, I would like to kind of add to what Mr. Outlaw just said, is that Nash Community College will own the units then so they can be used for other things in the future instead of paying a bunch of rent and we don't have anything at the end. And I'll gladly second the motion.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any questions on that motion or other comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. Thank you, ma'am. Next item on the agenda is an update to the board on the new EMS radio system. It actually says call on the radio committee. We really didn't have a radio committee per se. What we did have is Mr. Combs, Mr. Outlaw, and myself have worked on this pretty much for the last 3 or 4 months. It's an item that Mr. Combs brought to the board as a new member. I will say I think he actually used it in his campaign to get on this board. And I'd say be careful as we move into campaign season next year what you promise your constituents, because this board's got to fund it if it moves forward. But with that said, this is certainly a very needed item, and it has been very interesting. And I just asked Vice Chairman Outlaw if he would put together a presentation on this, and at this time I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Outlaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In order to organize my thoughts on this particular matter, I have some prepared comments that I'm going to read from, and a copy of these comments is available to the board, to the staff, to the press, and the attorney after the meeting. Janice will have those. She will hand them out after the meeting. As the board knows, Commissioner Cone, Chairman Davis, and myself have been evaluating the radio replacement project for our 16 fire departments for some time now. In this evaluation, we have been considering 2 types of radio systems, digital and Viper. Initially, we were leaning to a recommendation for digital, but after further discussion, which was based on feedback we were getting from some of the department chiefs, we decided to extend our evaluation to get additional input. Viper, with capability for communications from Murphy to Manio, is currently the radio of choice for the North Carolina Highway Patrol, the Nash County Sheriff's Department, the City of Rocky Mount, as well as Edgecombe County. Wilson County is also considering the Viper system. 39 of our 100 counties in North Carolina currently use the Viper system. During this period of initial evaluation, we received input from emergency services, Brian Brantley and Scott Rogers, the county manager, other county personnel, including the Sheriff's Department, as well as the personal interaction with many of the department chiefs. During the extended evaluation period, we've received input directly from all 16 county department chiefs, as well as their appointed radio committee, through a meeting we held with them at Nash Community College on November the 14th. At the November 14th meeting, we were given a presentation of both systems, digital and Viper. Following both presentations, Commissioner Cone, Chairman Davis, and myself, along with Brian Brantley and Scott Rogers, met with the department chiefs to discuss both systems and any concerns they may have. From this discussion, and based on the facts provided in the previous presentations, a majority of the department chiefs supported the Viper system. But there were a few that still had concerns with operational capability of the system as well as cost. To address the operational capability concerns, each department completed testing of the Viper system in their fire district on November the 16th with some retests on November the 21st. with a few exceptions in some areas that we feel can be addressed with additional infrastructure. Test results were good. Regarding costs, which is very important, providing our fire personnel with a system that provides the highest level of safety is of more concern to us than the additional cost. I believe the board would be in full agreement with that. With operational results achieved, as well as assurance that we will work with the departments regarding the funding issue, we have support for the Viper system from a majority of the department chiefs. Therefore, the recommendation today is that we go with the Viper radio system for use by all departments, and that this matter be turned over to the county manager to determine funding and any other implementation recommendations by our January regular meeting if possible. Some things for the manager to consider in this recommendation are initial funding, replacement funding, quantity of radios needed by departments, contracts with departments, any additional costs, for example, with infrastructure to improve signal transmission, personnel training to program new and replacement radios. Mr. Chairman, that completes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Outlaw. At this time, I would entertain any questions from board members about this. I know Mr. Outlaw said a lot right then, but I can assure you that we have spent a tremendous amount of time, not as much time as staff has on this, but when we work with our volunteer fire departments, I think we all fully understand the value that Nash County and its citizens get from the volunteers in our fire service, as well as our EMS, which is not volunteers, or some of them actually are in a few cases. But it's just was important to us to make sure that we had a buy-in on the system that we chose. It wasn't easy to get there because fortunately, each one of these individual fire departments have officers that have their own ideas sometimes, and that's great. But we kept on spending the time on this item just to be sure that we would get a large majority of them to agree with whatever decision we did make. The three commissioners that worked on it, quite frankly, went into this not knowing much about radios. We left knowing a lot about radios, but still understanding that it is a very complex subject that we will never learn all about the radios, and I'm sure staff learned quite a bit during the process as well. But we do feel that this would be the right decision for Nash County, and we would ask for the full board's support so we can move forward with this. This is another item that has taken a little more time than we would have liked for it to have. We've got some service areas, particularly in Mr. Combs' district, that are way underutilized, or we don't have the service that we need down there. It's just something that we need to move on with. And I'm sure the manager would be able to bring back a proposal for funding that we can all live with, is what we're hoping is. Any other questions at this time by board members? Mr. Belfield?
Are we looking at, from a funding standpoint, the county and the volunteer fire departments?
Mr. Belfield, this morning, we don't have a proposal for the funding.
No, I was just saying, are we looking at the possibilities of?
Right. What we are doing is we felt the best thing to do was give it back to staff and let them bring proposals to us for funding. Certainly, we are looking at what you just described, several models that it could be done under, but it would probably be a combination of those, as well as hopefully any grant funding that we can find in a hurry. We've got to move forward with this in a very short period of time. But all models would be, the manager would be asked to look at any models that he knows are available to fund this project.
Yeah.
Did you have a question, Ms. Richardson?
Well, I think that if we can get some grant money, I mean, if it's out there, we need to pursue it.
Sure, absolutely.
And also, I think the volunteer fire departments ought to participate too.
Okay. And whatever your feelings may be along funding, if you would let the manager know over the next 30 days, I'm sure he would include it in any proposal he brings back to us. Ms. Richardson?
I'm sorry, go ahead. I want to make one more comment when you finish, Ms. Richardson.
No, just in connection to the report that he gave. I had an opportunity to talk to two of my departments in my area over the weekend. They were a little bit hesitant, quite natural was in the beginning, but once you had the training, the classes on it, they understood more about what it was and how it was going to affect them, and there's two more that have decided to go with that.
Your two department chiefs were very active, and brought a lot of good ideas to the table. I would tell you that particular one over at Salem, both of them really, but the Salem gentleman, we certainly understood. He likes what he's got, simply because he can look out his window and see his tile and he doesn't have any service problems.
Yeah,
But
I
unfortunately, that's not the case throughout the county, but he has been very reasonable to work with.
Yeah, I understand Salem helped a couple of the other ones understand a lot about it.
They did, and I appreciate that. I appreciate your comment. Mr. Outlaw?
I just wanted to mention overall, the chiefs were very supportive in participating in discussions on this matter at Nash Community College. We had a good discussion. We had a presentation by Digital, following a presentation by Viper. There was a lot of information presented that I think clarified some of the misinformation that was out there. And I believe once we completed those two presentations, we got into that separate meeting with the chiefs, and we started talking about the two issues, capability of the system and funding. And we did the additional test, the retest. We got some good numbers there, and we've given them some assurance that we will work with them on funding. I believe that the chiefs, for the most part, are very supportive of moving to the Viper system.
The only thing I'd like to say is, it's just not just the volunteer fire department system, it's also EMS system. So we had to take into consideration both organizations, fire departments being volunteer, EMS being our EMS county system. So I think everybody's happy with the decision we made, and we really worked hard on it, and we all learned a lot about radios that we never knew. And we're headed in the right direction. If we can get it done.
Just one final thing, I hate to keep talking, but I think it would be important to note that our EMS group, Brian Brantley and Scott Rogers, and I believe probably more so Scott, I know he spent a lot of time on this. I know it's been frustrating. It's been a long time reaching this decision point, but this group, specifically the three commissioners that worked with you and Brian, appreciate your patience, your understanding, and the facts that you have presented before us through these groups to help us reach this decision point. We thank you very much for that.
All right, any other comments before I call for a motion? Since it wasn't an official committee, Mr. Outlaw, I would take your report as a motion if I could, but I would entertain a motion at this time for approval.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Mr. Outlaw. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Combs, and that motion is for the county of Nash to move forward with a Viper system for our EMS and volunteer fire departments. Any other questions on the motion, Mr. Belfield?
Now, the motion is to move forward with it and come up with a proposal?
Yes, sir. It is really a decision-making step that we are going to move to Viper, and the next step would be to approve the financing model. Okay. Any other questions? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? The motion carries, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen in the back, all of you, Sheriff's Department, EMS, Emergency Services. Okay, the next item on our agenda is item number 16, is the budget amendments, and I call on Donna Wood to present. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, I have a couple of budget amendments for the board's approval. The first one is with cooperative extension. This budget amendments to reallocate donations to the farmers market to be used to purchase and install a sound system at the farmers market. The approval for the sound system at the farmers market has been received by the Rocky Mount. The cooperative extension has received approval from the Historic Preservation Commission for this sound system, or for a sound system. We're currently seeking quotes, but the funding is not anticipated to go over $7,000. The next item is with the library. At the time the budget was adopted for fiscal year 2017-18, the final state funding had not been set for Braswell Memorial Library from North Carolina Department of Cultural Resources. Therefore, the previous year's budget was used. This amendment allocates funds according to North Carolina Department of Cultural Resources. This is a pass-through grant with Nash County being the pass-through agency. Braswell Memorial Library will receive a total of $135,344 from aid to public libraries in 17-18 compared to $130,598 in 16-17. Therefore, the budget amendment request is $4,746. I have one more budget amendment, and this is based on the funding request for the community college that's not on your item, but I wanted to go ahead and put it out there so we could get that approved. It's for $10,000 for Nash Community College capital coming out of fund balance.
Okay. All right, any questions on those three budget amendments? Entertain a motion for approval.
Move approval.
Moved by Mr. Belfield. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Wells. Any questions on those three amendments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign. Motion carries. Should have said it before I finished the last item, but for the benefit of the press, if you choose to report on our radio system, be sure you get a copy of Mr. Outlaw's comments. It's been a very sensitive issue, and we really need it to be accurate when we report it. I'm not saying that anybody doesn't report anything that's not accurate, but we've got some very sensitivity on this particular item, and we appreciate you getting those comments from the clerk before you leave today. Thank you. And of course, thank all of you for what you do every day. Moving on, next is the item number 17, which is board appointments, and I would ask Stacy to come back forward.
Okay, we've got a list of them, so bear with me. The Momeyer Planning Board and Board of Adjustments is our first one. During its meeting November the 20th, the Momeyer Town Council unanimously voted to recommend reappointment of Joan Bieber, extraterritorial jurisdiction member for the Momeyer Planning Board and Board of Adjustment. The term is for 3 years and would expire December 31st, 2020. The board is being asked to approve the appointment.
Entertain a motion to approve.
So
Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Richards. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Barnes. Any questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, the next one is for the ABC Board. If you will recall, in June, the board voted to extend the appointment for Wayne Hill, chairman, to oversee the construction project, with Chris Gardner being appointed beginning January 1, 2018. At this time, the board needs to designate a new chairman for the ABC Board.
All right, we need to designate a new chairman. I looked into this matter just a little bit and talked to Mike Murray over there, and as well as a couple of board members, and one name I'd like to be considered is Miss Julia Congleton Bryant, if we could. Is there any other names you'd like to consider? Seeing none, kind of box myself in the corner, I would recommend that we approve Miss Bryant for this chairmanship of the ABC Board then, as a motion. Is there a
Mr.
second to that
Chairman?
motion? Yes, sir.
I offer a motion that we approve Julia Congleton Bryant to be the board chairman of the ABC Board.
Okay, I like doing it better that way. Is there a second to that motion?
Second?
Made by Mr. Belfield, second by Ms. Richardson. Any questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. The Upper Coastal Plain Rural Planning Organization is our next one. Commissioner Wayne Outlaw represents Nash County, and his one-year term will expire December 31st, 2017. Mr. Outlaw is eligible and recommended for reappointment.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I move that Commissioner Outlaw be appointed for the Upper Coastal Plain Rural Planning Organization Board.
Have a motion by Mr. Belfield. Is there a second?
Second.
second by Ms. Barnes. Any questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a light sign? Motion carries.
And I'd like to let you know that the towns of Red Oak, Middlesex, and Spring Hope have been contacted and will discuss their recommendations in their December meetings, and I should have that information for you at our next meeting for those appointments.
Okay.
The Ag District Advisory Board is our next one. There are 4 members of the Ag District Advisory Board whose terms expire December 31st, 2017. These members are Dan Cohn, David Griffin, Jeff Tyson, and Gary High. All of these members are in good standing and eligible and recommended for reappointment for a 3-year term.
Move for approval.
Moved by Ms. Barnes. Second.
Second.
Mr. Outlaw, any questions on that motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed by a light sign? Motion carries.
The next one is for the Eastern North Carolina Livestock Arena Board. Greg Sconyers can no longer serve on the Eastern North Carolina Livestock Arena Board. The request has been made for the approval of an appointment of Ann Godwin. There are no term limits to this appointment, and the application for Mrs. Godwin was in your agenda packet.
All right. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we approve Ann Godwin to the livestock.
Made by
Arena
Mr.
Board.
Combs. There's a second to the motion. Second by Ms. Wells. Any questions on that motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed by a light sign? Motion carries.
The next one is for the Braswell Memorial Library Board of Trustees. Linda Hardy's term is expiring December 31st, 2017. Mrs. Hardy is eligible and recommended for reappointment to serve a second 4-year term.
Entertain a motion for
I
approval.
make a motion that we appoint Linda Hardy.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Wells, second by Mr. Belfield. Any questions on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a light sign? Motion carries.
The next is for the Carolinas Gateway Partnership Board of Directors. There are 5 members of the Carolinas Gateway Partnership Board of Directors whose terms expire December 31st, 2017. These members are Gerald Batts, Jerry Harris, Valerie Lee, Luther Harvey Lewis Jr., and Wayne Outlaw. All of these members are eligible and recommended for reappointment for a 3-year term.
Entertain a motion for approval.
Move approval.
Moved by Ms. Barnes, second by Mr. Belfield. Any questions on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. Next item.
For the Carolinas Gateway Partnership Executive Committee, there are 4 members of the Carolina Gateway Partnership Executive Committee whose terms expire December 31st, 2017. These members are Robbie Davis, Gerald Batts, Valerie Lee, and Wayne Outlaw. All of these members are eligible and recommended for reappointment for a 3-year term.
Entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Wells. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Combs. Any questions on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries.
The next is for the Farmers Market Advisory Board. There are 4 members of the Farmers Market Advisory Board whose terms expire December 31st, 2017. Staff are requesting reappointment of Sue Leggett and Evan Chavez for a second 3-year term.
Entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Move approval.
Moved by
Second.
Ms. Barnes, second by Mr. Belfield. Any questions on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries.
And then for the other seats on the Farmers Market Advisory Board, staff have also made recommendations for 3 new appointments, and they are as follows. Karen White, a farmers market vendor with the Twin Oaks Farm in Spring Hope. Kenneth Baker, a farmers market vendor with the Baker Farm in Nashville. And an additional member to the board, Sue Moore, a master volunteer and farmers market weekly customer from Rocky Mount. The master gardeners are represented every week at the market by their volunteers, and Mr. Winters would like for a master gardener to be represented on the board.
All right, any questions on that item? Entertain a motion for approval.
Make a motion, we approve these 3 members to the Farmers Market Advisory Board.
Moved by Mr. Combs, there's a second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Wells. Any questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries.
And the next is for the Nash Healthcare System Board of Commissioners. There are 5 members of the Nash Healthcare System Board of Commissioners whose terms expired December 31st, 2017. Their CEO search has been all-consuming, and progress from their nominating committee has been delayed. Plans for the nominating committee are to meet in December and to take their recommendations to their board in January. Therefore, I should be able to bring those nominations to this board in February. And then, of course, our Consolidated Human Services Board, we continue to have a vacancy on that board for the psychiatrist member.
Hospital didn't express any desire for us to go ahead and appoint the ones that were eligible for, or did you gonna bring it all at one time?
No, because the nominating committee hasn't discussed it at all with their board.
Okay, fine. All right, well, we appreciate that report, and we'll continue to look for the last item and wait till January to take care of the hospital board.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. You have next item also, number 18, which is the meeting calendar for 2018 for the Nash County Board of Commissioners.
Yes, sir.
Did I skip one? I'm sorry.
Yep.
Excuse me
We
one.
got the board appointment workbook, but,
That was just,
I don't see no.
the workbook is just for your viewing.
Mm-hmm.
Give me one.
Next thing is the
Did
calendar.
something get added on the one you gave me this morning, Tracy?
No, I think there was some confusion with the workbook that was attached. Is that correct? Yeah, so there,
That's just for the board to view.
Meeting, motions for appointments. Item 17 is board appointments. On mine, it's 18 is the meeting calendar. Did you have something different, Mr.?
No, I was just looking at the attendees for the legislative
Oh, okay,
conference.
okay, all right. Does any action need to be taken on item Ms. Richardson speaking of?
no, sir.
Okay, all right. Item 18, meeting calendar for 2018.
Okay. The clerk to the board is required by law to have available for the public the scheduled meeting dates for the calendar year. In 2018, there are 4 meetings that fall on holidays and need to be rescheduled. In addition, March 5th is a regular meeting date that conflicts with the NACO Legislative Conference, which is from March 3rd to March 7th. That will be held in Washington, D.C. And Commissioners Fred Belfield, Mary Wells, and our county manager, Z. Lamb, are attending. I apologize, gentlemen. I apologize.
You need to laugh.
So they will be attending the conference, and then the recommendation, the meeting schedule that's being recommended follows in your packet. It does show the conflicts with the holidays, the conflict with the NACO Legislative Conference, and then there's also a proposed dates for the Commissioners' Retreat.
Which would be, take place of our last meeting in March.
And it's a budget retreat.
The budget retreat, right, okay. Y'all have had a chance to look at that. Any concern about the calendar as presented? And you recall we adopted a policy a few months ago not to have the second meeting in July and December, which is indicated on here.
The joint meeting with the school board, did they indicate they're going to discuss that tonight and make a decision
For the dates, that's correct.
for the dates?
Yeah.
And those dates were April 12th and October 18th, I believe?
I don't have those with me, but what we would do there, Ms. Barnes, is announce it at the, would be a recess meeting at that meeting. I don't think we really firmed that date up. We just gave them a proposal for a couple of dates, just to keep us on track.
Dates on that.
Right, I don't recall those dates right now. Any other comments or questions on the schedule? And we actually need to approve this calendar, so I'd entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Outlaw, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Belfield. Any questions on it? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? The calendar, motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now on item number 19, which is information for the board. Mr. Wren, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Of course, as usual, I have the monthly report that I Need your, it's just for informational purposes. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Just need your approval on the report. It's just for informational purposes, so that's all I need on that.
Have you collected all the money yet, sir?
Not all of it, but it is trending in the right direction.
That's great. Okay. Thank you, sir. Item number 20, tax refunds.
And then I would need your approval to disperse the refunds.
All right. Any questions on the refunds there from board members?
I move approval.
Moved by Mr. Bellfield. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Outlaw. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of approving the tax refunds for the month of December, say aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Requested. All right, we're now on item number 21, getting near the end. Commissioner comments. Any comments from board members at this time?
Only one I would make is that I believe as a board, we've had a good year. And I could elaborate on that, which I won't bother to do. Just overall, we've had a good year.
I agree with you, Mr. Bellfield. We've had a great year. It's probably a record year in a conservative person making this statement may get in trouble, but a record year for Nash County in receiving grants, and we certainly appreciate all the hard work of those involved in that, particularly Ms. McGee, who facilitates that. We've been very successful this year in that, as well as many other things. Any other comments? If nobody else has one, I got one comment I'd like to make concerning our hospital, if I could. And what I'd like to do is get the commissioners' approval, if I could, to get in touch with our chairman. As you know, our hospital is not done well financially for the last 3 years, and in reading their minutes, the projection for losses continues at least for a couple of more years. And Mr. Barnes, feel free to express your comments and ask us not to do this. I certainly respect your position on that board, and if I'm bearing you by this request, please feel free to say that. But what I'd like to do is the comments that I get from the public and, quite frankly, some of the employees at the hospital is that they don't quite understand why we continue doing large capital improvement projects out there in a period of time when we apparently not able to show a profit on the operating side of the hospital. Certainly with the investments, we came close last year with investment income, but in the operating side. And I just think, since it's a Nash County hospital, that we ought to make a request of the commissioners that serve on the board of the hospital to maybe at least consider tabling any non-essential capital improvements plan until such time as we are showing a profit in the hospital operating side again. And I use the word non-essential because certainly it's not the charge of this board to run the hospital. We don't want to run the hospital like our school systems. General statute doesn't allow it either. But since it is a county-owned hospital, I do think that we should at least express the concerns of this board sometimes. And I personally have a genuine concern of the continuance of building large capital projects out there. Some of them are essential, some of them certainly, particularly the ones I look at moving forward when I read their minutes, some of them are not essential, and I just think it would be best. I know what this board would do. We wouldn't be doing non-essential projects if we didn't have a revenue to carry them, to cover them each year. But I'd just like to get a consensus of the board to formulate a very carefully structured letter asking for that, if I could. Anybody have any objection to that?
I have no objection as long as we are sticking with non-essentials.
Right. Mr. Bellfield, when you and I spoke about this item, you brought a very good point. And Mr. Bellfield's point was he feels like that the hospital has some areas that it could look into, particularly concerning the overall health of our citizens in eastern North Carolina. And with your concern, Mr. Bellfield, I don't know that we have a speaker for our second meeting in January yet, do we?
Not yet.
Okay, I'd ask Mr. Outlaw to consider reaching out, or having staff reach out to the hospital to have them make that presentation. I don't know where we would be as far as a new CEO at that time. It may be finalized or it may not. Do you know, Ms. Barnes?
So we are interviewing the final two candidates on Thursday and Wednesday of next week. So hopefully,
Will be, okay.
yeah, January will be.
I think it would be good timing, and Mr. Bellfield, that will give you a chance to express your concerns to members of the board. I'm sure the chairman would be there, and maybe the new CEO. If not, certainly the interim one would be there at that point in time. If you would consider that, Mr. Outlaw.
If the board is in agreement, then I would ask you to pursue that for the next mid-month meeting.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I have another item that I'll discuss with you separately after I discuss it with EMS, something I'd like to see presented as well.
Okay.
Okay.
That would be an internal organization
That's
item.
right.
Gotcha, okay. Well, if there's no concern about me doing that, I will work with the manager and structure that letter, and I just think it would be something that this board ought to be doing from time to time with our hospital. I'll move forward with that. Moving on to item number 22, well, Ms. Barnes, let me ask you again, you okay with it?
I am, and I happen to serve on the committee, the Facilities and Planning Committee, and we met last week on a couple projects that are in the near future, and I did express my concern about moving forward with those projects, given our financial situation there. And I guess, well, it was pretty apparent by the vote that one other board member and myself were the only two that had those concerns. So we were in the minority, and I think that's the feeling on the whole, the full board as well. So. So that's,
Am I throwing you under the bus in doing this?
no, I mean, I expressed the same concern last week about the non-essential building projects. I mean, and I feel like at our meeting on Thursday with the school board, we expressed our concerns about capital needs and how we feel about that, and taking a conservative approach to spending some of those dollars. So I feel like that's the way we operate.
Okay, well, thank you. Moving on to item 22, the manager report, Mr. Lamb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. At the first meeting in November, we had a presentation from Veteran Services and a member of the public about parking signs for veterans. We were tasked with coming together with a recommendation regarding Purple Heart veteran signs and all-inclusive veteran signs. We did form a committee, and we have decided, if there's no objection from this board, that we would, at the administration building, have a single Purple Heart veteran sign and one all-inclusive veteran sign, and at all our other facilities, Senior Center, Ag Center, Health Department, Courthouse, Farmers Market, and Rocky Mount Health Department, we would have a single, all-inclusive veteran sign. So that's the what the committee has decided to do, and we're planning to order those if there's no objection.
I see none, sir.
Okay, great. Both the landfill project and the Southern Nash Senior Center project are currently out to bid. We should have some figures for you in our January meeting. Last week, Mr. Tolson brought a proposal to me regarding the 2 shell spaces that we had reserved, and we're not going to finish in the courthouse. One's on the first floor, one's on the second floor. One on the second floor is a very large room. The idea was it wasn't going to be finished out in any way, just cement floors and everything. And he acquired a $24,000 proposal to finish out both of those rooms. They'll just be big blank rooms. So again, Mr. Tolson recommended that, and I've approved that unless there is objection. And we have contingency to pay for that. Our department head training committee is implementing some in-house training for our department heads and supervisors. We brought in Sylvia Johnson, who's a longtime veteran of state personnel dealing with Health and Human Services. She's a consultant for both our DSS and health departments and has been for many years since her retirement. And she's providing 2 training sessions. The first one took place November 28th with a turnout of about 48 employees. A second session will take place December 12th. In addition, in total, we had about 80 employees sign up and 100% of our department heads. So just going over our personnel policies, and I'm going to the second one. I stepped in for the first one, but I'm going to the second one, and everybody was very pleased with the initial training session. Sylvia Johnson I've known for many years, and she is excellent. She also helped us with our personnel policy when we adopted it several years ago, and made the transition for the health and DSS employees to make sure we had all those requirements required by federal law in our personnel policy. It's with sadness that I announce we received last week a letter indicating from Donna Boone that she plans, after 35 years, to retire March 1st. I did extend to her my authority to keep her around as far as a pay increase, but she has made the decision that after 35 years, she's ready to retire. So it's with sadness that I have to announce that. She's done a great job and been very dedicated to that agency for many, many years. Our environmental health section is down 3 positions. Work's starting to get backed up. We've had a resignation and a retirement. So we're starting to hear from contractors about concerns about timely inspections. So we've made an offer to someone 10% over the minimum that's in another county and certified, and it wasn't enough to entice them to come to our county. So we have decided to offer existing staff members overtime by working on Saturdays. And so I just wanted to let y'all know that in order to make sure we keep up with these things, that we are allowing our current staff to get overtime by working that extra day. Y'all, I'm sure, have seen news articles that the State Department of Health and Human Services last Monday, took over Cardinal Innovations, the mental health provider for 20 counties. The concern primarily dealt with executive compensation. I'm not sure where that leaves East Point's requested merger with Cardinal, which thus far has been denied by the state, but that's a very fluid situation with Cardinal. Not sure what's going to happen. Mandy Cohen came to a meeting that Ms. Wells and I attended last week and assured those 20 counties that they would be involved in the process of of the reorganization of that board. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that Mandy Cohen has really impressed everybody, both legislative leaders as well as county folks throughout the state. Her abilities to work with everyone and to tackle issues when they come up has been very impressive. And so we continue to work with her regarding our lawsuit that was filed by East Point against the county, that they also sued her and the department. And so hopefully we can resolve that in the very near future, but the only people making money off of it, as usual, are the lawyers. So that's my report, and if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Any questions from the manager about his report at this time? Good report. The only comment, excuse me, Mr. Belfield, go ahead.
We be concerned about Cardinal?
Well,
fortunately, no.
We're not concerned about Cardinal because we didn't join Cardinal.
I didn't ask my question right. I should have said that the impact of Cardinal or whatever the situation is that wouldn't have no effect on Nash County.
It only does in the sense that since the beginning of the lawsuit filed by East Point, it's been suggested that if the state would allow East Point to merge with Cardinal, that they would drop the suit against us. So that's the only relation to us at this point.
All right. That's fine.
I think it's also noteworthy that the due diligence on the part of this board on that particular item when we selected where we were going to end up at was kind of like the radio system. We headed one way and then we backed up and studied it further and headed another way, and then we backed up and looked at it a third time and went back where we may have been to start with. And I'm grateful that this board kept studying that item, didn't get it tied up in the Cardinal situation up there. We'd be really scratching our heads last week, I think, but I do believe we've made the right decision where we went, and it was, I'm always complaining about how slow we move on stuff, but some things you just gotta move slow to make sure you get it right. Mr. Lamb, you say that's it for you, sir?
That's it, thank you.
All right, I'd entertain now a motion. Well, first of all, Mr. Outlaw, do you need anything under personnel under closed session today, or are you just receiving documents? Would there be any discussion on personnel?
No. We're just receiving documents today, and then we will be meeting at some point to review documents, and we'll come back to the board in January to discuss that matter.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure you didn't need that item on there. All right, I'd entertain a motion for closed session for two reasons: matter of attorney-client privilege and economic development at this time. Moved by Ms. Wells. There's a second to go into closed session.
Yeah.
Second by Mr. Belfield. Any questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. We now move into closed session. Do we anticipate any action in closed session, Mr. Lamb or Mr. Durham?
Do not.
I do not.
Do not, okay. For benefit of the press.
Yeah.